The valedictorian arena at Ohio State's College of Engineering holds exactly 2,400 people. I counted the empty seats from the stage, not obsessively, not dramatically, just the way an electrical engineer counts things. Precisely, automatically, without emotion. It's what we do. We measure, we calculate, we verify. I counted them because I needed something to do with my hands while the dean called my name and I crossed that stage alone. While camera flashes from other families lit up the rows around me. While a woman in the third row sobbed into her husband's shoulder because her son had just shaken the dean's hand, and the sound of her crying was the loudest thing in that room for a moment. I counted empty seats because if I thought about anything else, if I thought about the chairs I'd reserved in row F with little handwritten name cards, chairs that had been empty since the ceremony began, I would have stopped walking. My name is Patrick Holloway. I'm 38 years old, a lead electrical engineer at a mid-sized firm in Columbus, Ohio, and as of that Saturday afternoon in May, I held a master's degree in electrical systems engineering that had taken me 4 years of night school, weekend labs, and silent sacrifices to earn. My wife Jessica wasn't there. My daughters Emma, 12, and Lily, 9, weren't there. My stepson Braden, 14, wasn't there. And I want you to understand something before I tell you the rest of this story. I want you to understand what this degree cost me. Because when people hear night school, they picture something manageable. A Tuesday evening class, a weekend study group, something you fit around your life. That is not what this was. This degree cost me every Saturday morning for 4 years while my daughters played soccer, and I sat in a lecture hall in Columbus with a thermos of cold coffee reviewing power grid theory. It cost me every Christmas break except one, because finals always landed in December, and I was always behind because full-time engineering work doesn't pause for academic calendars. It cost me the fishing trip my father-in-law invited me on twice before he stopped asking. It cost me sleep, weekends, date nights, and what felt like a year of my life compressed into 4. Jessica knew this. She had always known this. She was there when I enrolled. She was there when I told her I wanted to do something bigger with my career, that I had a patent idea forming, a modular microgrid system for rural energy distribution, and that a master's in electrical systems would help me take it from a sketch on a legal pad to something real. She said, "I'm proud of you, Patrick. Do it." So I did. And on the day I walked across that stage to collect the degree that represented 4 years of our shared sacrifice, or what I believed was shared sacrifice, my wife was 40 minutes away in Dublin, Ohio, standing in the backyard of her ex-husband's new 5,000-square-foot home, holding a glass of champagne while their children watched him cut a ribbon on his brand-new outdoor kitchen. I didn't know that yet when I crossed the stage. I found out when I walked off it. Before I tell you what happened next, I need you to hit that subscribe button and leave a comment below. I want to know. Have you ever sacrificed years of your life for something, only to find out the people closest to you weren't taking it seriously? Drop it in the comments. Because what I'm about to tell you is going to make you feel things, and I want to hear from you. I need to go back 3 years, because none of this makes sense without context. Jessica and I met at a barbecue in Westerville when I was 32 and she was 30. She'd been divorced for 2 years from a man named Todd Barfield, who at the time ran a mid-sized commercial real estate firm in Columbus. Todd and Jessica had 2 children together, Braden and Lily. Emma was mine from a previous relationship. Her mother passed away when Emma was 4, which meant I was raising Emma alone when Jessica and I met. I want to be honest about Todd because the story requires it. Todd is not a villain in the way you might expect. He is charming. He is financially successful in the way that makes people comfortable around him, the way that fills rooms. He takes his kids on ski trips and buys them things that light their faces up. He throws the kind of parties where the food is catered and the lawn is perfect, and neighbors stop on the sidewalk to watch. He pays his child support on time. On paper, Todd Barfield is a good divorced father. What Todd is not is consistent in ways that matter quietly. He misses Braden's school presentations because of client dinners. He cancels Lily's weekend visits for golf tournaments. He promises things that evaporate, but he always comes back with something bigger, something shinier, something that makes the children forget they were disappointed. And children, especially children who love a parent, will take the shiny thing every time. Jessica knew this. She'd told me about it in detail during the early months of our relationship, sitting at my kitchen table in Clintonville while Emma slept upstairs. She'd described the pattern clearly. Todd disappears. Todd returns with something spectacular. The kids forgive him instantly. It's exhausting, she'd said, watching them choose glitter over substance every single time. I thought she understood the difference. I thought she was immune to it. I was wrong. Here's what I didn't understand about Jessica until much later. She had spent 7 years married to Todd Barfield, absorbing his values through daily proximity. The spectacle, the grand gesture, the event as proof of love. And while she'd intellectually rejected those values when she left him, they were still wired into her somewhere deep, the way a song you haven't heard in a decade still lives in your muscle memory. I offered her substance. Quiet, consistent, reliable substance. I showed up. I fixed things. I paid bills on time. I helped Braden with his science fair project for 3 consecutive years, even though he isn't my biological son. I attended every school event for all 3 children, including the ones Todd skipped. But I wasn't spectacular. And somewhere around year 2 of my master's program, while I was buried in coursework and Jessica was spending more time talking to Todd about the kids' schedules, I think the contrast started working against me in ways I wasn't seeing. The invitation to Todd's housewarming arrived in February. His new house, a $1.2 million property in Dublin with a finished basement, a home theater, and apparently an outdoor kitchen he'd saved for a ribbon-cutting ceremony, had been purchased 6 months earlier. The housewarming had been planned for May, same weekend as my graduation. Jessica showed me the invitation. "We can go to both," she said. "Your ceremony is at 2. Todd's thing starts at 5. It works." I should have said something then. Looking back, I should have said, "Jessica, this is my graduation. This is 4 years of my life. This is not a thing we split the afternoon with." But I didn't, because I was still in the mindset of a man who believes that if he just keeps doing the right thing long enough, the people around him will eventually recognize it without being told. A man who believes showing up is enough. "Okay," I said, "as long as you're all there when I cross the stage." She kissed my cheek. "We'll be in the front row." I should have written that down. I should have had it notarized. I should have built it into the concrete the way I build redundancy into electrical systems. A backup, a fail-safe, something you can point to when everything fails. Instead, I believed her. The week before graduation, Todd called Jessica. I wasn't in the room for this call. I pieced it together later from what Jessica told me and what Braden accidentally revealed. Todd had called to tell her that the outdoor kitchen installation had been delayed and rescheduled. The ribbon cutting was now moving to noon. He wanted the kids there early. He wanted a full family afternoon. He'd rented a bouncy castle for the little ones attending and hired a DJ for the evening portion. A bouncy castle. A DJ. I was in my home office that night finishing my final project presentation when Jessica appeared in the doorway. "So, Todd's thing moved earlier," she said. "Earlier how?" I asked, not looking up from my laptop. "Noon. He wants the kids there by noon." "My ceremony is at 2. "I know." She paused. "But the kids are really excited about the new house." I looked up then, and I saw something in her face that I didn't have a name for in the moment, but I do now. It was the expression of a person who has already made a decision and is looking for permission to not feel bad about it. "Jessica," I said, "my graduation is in 1 week. I've been working toward this for 4 years. This is the thing for our family." "I know it is," she said, "and I'm proud of you. But Lily's been asking about the outdoor kitchen for months, and Todd got a DJ, and I'm getting a master's degree." She didn't say anything. "Will you be at my ceremony?" I asked. "Of course," she said. But she said it the way people say of course when they mean probably. When they mean I'll try. When they mean let's see how the day unfolds. I went back to my presentation. I told myself she'd be there. I told myself the kids would be there. I told myself that 4 years of demonstrated commitment had earned me at least 2 hours. I was wrong. Saturday, May 11th. Ceremony begins at 2 p.m. I got to Ohio State's Nationwide Arena, the venue the engineering college uses for its larger ceremonies, at 12:45. I found my gown in the designated area, pinned my name card on, and texted Jessica. Heading in now. Row F, seats 3 to 6 are reserved for you guys. Love you. She replied, we're on our way. So proud of you. 2 exclamation points. The kind of enthusiasm that looks like excitement from a distance, but, in retrospect, reads like guilt from up close. I found my place in the processional line among the other graduate students. The man next to me, a guy named Theo from the Power Systems track, had his entire extended family in the building. His mother was already crying somewhere in the audience. I could hear her from the staging area. First in my family to get a master's, Theo said, straightening his cap. Mine too, I said. We shook hands, strangers sharing a moment. At 1:58, I texted Jessica, ceremony's about to start. You here? No reply. At 2:07, as the processional began, I texted again, walking in now. Row F, no reply. I walked into that arena behind Theo and in front of a woman named Renata who kept stepping on my gown and apologizing. The seats filled my peripheral vision in blurs of color, blue and scarlet, Ohio State everywhere, families pressed together, phones raised, everyone searching for their person in the line. I searched row F empty, all 4 seats, my handwritten name card still sitting on the folded seat cushions. I kept walking. The ceremony was 52 minutes long. I know because I checked my watch 3 times. There were speeches. There was a video tribute to the engineering program. There was a student speaker, not me, but a woman named Priya who'd done her thesis on quantum computing and who had 12 people in the audience holding a banner with her name on it. When the dean called my name, I stood up, walked across the stage, shook his hand, took my diploma case, and smiled for the photographer the way you're supposed to. Row F was still empty. I walked back to my seat, sat down, opened the diploma case and looked at the paper inside. Master of Science in Electrical Systems Engineering. Patrick Daniel Holloway. 4 years. I closed it. When the ceremony ended, I stood outside the arena on the John H. Herrick Drive sidewalk in my gown while other families swarmed around me. Theo's mother had stopped crying and started taking photographs. A father I didn't know was lifting his son off the ground in a hug that looked like it could break a rib. My phone buzzed. One text from Jessica. We need to talk. Call me urgently. Then I saw the missed calls. While my phone was silenced during the ceremony, she had called 9 times. Then again after the ceremony. By the time I stood on that sidewalk, I counted 95 missed calls. I stood there in my gown, diploma case under my arm, watching Theo's mother kiss his cheek for the 14th time, and I looked at the number 95 on my screen. And something shifted in my chest. Not rage, not grief. Something quieter and more deliberate than either of those things. I didn't call her back, not right away. Instead, I went to Murphy's, a bar and grill on North High Street I'd been going to since my first semester. Sat at the bar in my graduation gown, ordered a burger and a beer, and thought about my next move with the same methodical precision I bring to every system I've ever designed. Because here's what I understood in that moment, sitting alone at a bar in my gown. This was not an accident. This was not a scheduling mishap. This was the result of a slow, invisible accumulation of decisions that had been made by Jessica, by Todd, by the children, in which my graduation was not valued the way Todd's housewarming was valued. And I needed to understand exactly why before I did anything. I ate my burger. I read my diploma. I let the 95 missed calls sit unanswered. And I started to plan. I called her back at 6:47 p.m. Patrick. She picked up on the first ring. Her voice had the texture of someone who had been crying for hours and had run out of tears and was now just hollow. I am so sorry. I need you to know. Where are you? I asked. We're at Todd's. We've been here since noon. I kept trying to call you, but your phone was off during the ceremony and then we just... Time got away and... What time did you leave the house? I asked. A pause. 11. The ceremony was at 2. I know. Dublin is 22 minutes from Nationwide Arena. I know, Patrick. So between 11 and 2 you had 3 hours and you chose not to come. She started to cry. The kind of crying that is genuine but is also, if you've known someone long enough, slightly performative. Jessica cried the way she did everything, with presence and feeling. But I had learned, slowly, to distinguish between her grief and her management of my reaction to her grief. The kids were having such a good time, she said. And I kept thinking we'd leave in just a few more minutes. And then Todd fired up the new grill and the kids didn't want to go and you didn't want to go either, I said. She didn't answer that. Come home, I said. We'll talk when you get here. Are you angry? I thought about the empty seats, the handwritten name cards, Theo's mother with her banner, the 95 missed calls I'd stared at while a bartender on North High Street asked if I was celebrating something in that gown. I'm not angry, I said. And I meant it. Come home. She arrived at 8:15 with all 3 children, who were sunburned and full and happy in the way children are when they've had an unexpectedly perfect day. Emma ran to me first. Emma, who is 12 and sharp in the way that girls raised without mothers often are, who had noticed things about the situation before anyone told her to notice them. Dad, she said, hugging me hard around the waist. I wanted to be there. Mom said we were going, but then... I know, I said. It's okay, Em. It wasn't okay. But Emma was 12, and she was not the problem. Braden and Lily followed, both of them slightly sheepish in the way children are when they know something has gone wrong but don't fully understand their own role in it. Congrats, Patrick, Braden said. He's 14 and trying very hard to be a man. I appreciated the effort. Thank you, bud. Jessica stood in the doorway last. She looked beautiful in the way she always does, and exhausted in the way guilty people often are. She was holding the remains of what looked like a takeout bag from a restaurant near Todd's house. I sent the kids upstairs to shower and change. I sat across from Jessica at the kitchen table, the same kitchen table I'd built from a kit 2 years ago on a Saturday morning when I was supposed to be studying, because Lily had asked for a bigger table for family dinners. And I looked at my wife. Tell me everything, I said. From 11 this morning. All of it. She told me. It was worse than I expected. She'd known, when they left the house at 11, that leaving at 11 made it essentially impossible to attend my graduation. Dublin to the venue, parking, finding seats, even with a clean run, they would have arrived during the processional at best. She'd made a calculation, standing in Todd's driveway watching the kids squeal over his new outdoor kitchen, and the calculation had come out wrong. I kept thinking I'd pull them away, she said. But every time I tried, Todd had something else lined up. The food, the DJ, the neighbors' kids showing up. Did Todd know about my graduation? I asked. A longer pause this time. I mentioned it. What did he say? She looked at her hands. He said that he was sorry, but he'd already paid the deposits and the kids had been so excited and that you'd understand. You'd understand. I let that sit between us for a moment. I have something I need to show you, I said. I went to my office and came back with 2 folders. One contained the documentation for the patent application I'd filed 6 weeks earlier on my modular microgrid system. The thing I'd been developing in parallel with my coursework. The thing that had kept me up on nights when everything else felt pointless. I'd been in quiet conversation with an energy infrastructure firm out of Cincinnati, Aldrich Energy Solutions, who had expressed serious interest in licensing the technology. The conversation had been progressing for months. The second folder I'd put together that afternoon at the bar. It contained the paperwork for a new bank account I'd opened 3 months earlier. Not hidden, not secret, but separate. The kind of financial preparation a man makes when he's not entirely sure his marriage is going in the direction he hoped, but isn't ready to say that out loud. I laid both folders on the kitchen table. This is the patent, I said. It's been filed. Aldrich is offering a licensing deal. The terms are still being negotiated, but the initial estimate is somewhere between $180,000 and $250,000 in the first contract year. Jessica's expression changed. The guilt shifted into something more complicated. "And this," I said, opening the second folder, "is documentation of where I stand financially, separately from our joint accounts. The master's is finished. The patent is filed. And I've spent the last 4 months thinking about what I want my life to look like, because I've been so buried in trying to build something for this family that I forgot to ask whether this family was building toward the same thing. Patrick, I'm not done." I wasn't angry. My voice was even. That's the thing about being an engineer in a moment of crisis. You default to systems thinking. Identify the failure point. Trace it back. Fix it or replace it. I need to ask you something, and I need you to answer honestly. Of course. If Todd had thrown this party on a day that didn't conflict with my graduation, if the scheduling had been different, would today have felt different to you? Or is the problem that, somewhere along the way, what I'm doing started to feel less important than what Todd is doing? The silence was its own answer. Jessica started to cry again. But this time, I recognized it as real grief, not management. She pressed her hands over her face and sat there for a long moment. "I don't know how it happened," she finally said. "I love you. You know I do. But you've been gone for 4 years, Patrick. Not physically. I know you were here, but you were always somewhere else. Always studying, always at the lab, always on your phone with those engineers from Cincinnati. And Todd shows up. He's loud about it. He makes an event out of it. And the kids respond to that, and She stopped. "You respond to it too," I said. She didn't deny it. "I'm going to go stay at my brother's for a few days," I said. "Not because I'm done, but because I need to think. And I can't think clearly in a house where I'm managing everyone's feelings about this. I need time to figure out what I actually want." "Please don't go," she said. "I'm not leaving," I said. "I'm pausing." I packed a bag. I hugged Emma and told her I loved her. I told Braden and Lily the same. I drove to my brother Neil's house in Bexley, where I'd arranged to stay without explaining why. Just told him I needed a few nights. Neil is 42, works in logistics, and has the particular gift of not asking questions until you're ready to answer them. He put a cold beer on the coffee table and turned on a baseball game and left me alone. I sat there and thought. Here's what I understood by the end of that first night. The graduation was a symptom, not the disease. The disease had been growing for years, invisible the way a wiring fault is invisible until something catches fire. It was the way Jessica spoke about Todd with unconscious warmth that she'd slowly stopped using with me. It was the way the kids mentioned his name like a weather system. Unavoidable, impressive, something you plan around. It was the way my accomplishments, the degree, the patent, the quiet years of sustained effort, had become background noise while Todd's spectacles remained foreground. I'd been building, he'd been performing, and in a house with 3 children who learned what to value by watching the adults around them, the performer had won. I didn't blame the kids. I didn't even fully blame Jessica. I blame the system, the invisible architecture of values that gets built inside a family over time, where consistent love gets mistaken for unremarkable love, and where the man who rents the bouncy castle starts to seem more significant than the man who sits at the kitchen table at midnight working towards something real. But here's the thing about being an engineer in a moment of quiet clarity. You don't just identify the failure point. You redesign the system. And I was done being background noise. On Monday morning, 2 days after graduation, I called Jeffrey Aldrich at Aldrich Energy Solutions in Cincinnati. "Patrick," he said warmly, "congratulations on finishing the degree. Big weekend for you." "It was," I said. I want to move on the licensing agreement. The terms you proposed last month, I want to countersign and move forward. A pause of pleased surprise. That's great news. I'll have our legal team circulate the revised terms today. Can you come to Cincinnati Thursday? I'll be there. I'd been slow walking the deal for months, uncertain about timing, uncertain about what a licensing agreement meant for my family's financial picture during a period of transition. I was no longer uncertain. Thursday, I drove to Cincinnati, to Aldrich's offices on East 4th Street overlooking the Ohio River, and I signed the initial framework of the most significant professional achievement of my life. The deal was for a 5-year licensing arrangement on my microgrid patent, with Aldrich holding exclusive rights to commercial deployment for the first 3 years. The signing bonus alone, $85,000, would hit my account within 30 days. The first-year licensing fee would bring the total to just over $210,000. Jeffrey Aldrich shook my hand across a conference table with floor-to-ceiling windows and said, "You've built something genuinely important here, Patrick. Rural electrification infrastructure in this country is 30 years behind where it should be. Your system changes that." I thought about the legal pad where I'd first sketched the concept. A Tuesday night in our living room while Jessica watched TV and the kids were in bed. A legal pad and a mechanical pencil and 4 years of working towards something I genuinely believed in. "Thank you," I said. It took a while. "Worth it," he said. I drove back to Columbus. I did not call Jessica. I called Emma. "Dad," she said immediately. "Are you coming home?" "Soon," I said. "How are you doing?" "Mom's been quiet," Emma said carefully. "She's 12 and she picks up on things. She keeps looking at her phone." "Tell me something good," I said. Emma thought for a moment. "I got an A on my science project, the one about electrical circuits." I smiled so wide it felt like my face would split. "Of course you did. I was thinking about you when I did it." "I know," I said. "I'll be home this weekend. We'll celebrate." I came home on Saturday. I didn't come home loudly. I didn't come home with declarations or ultimatums. I came home the same way I'd been doing everything for 4 years, quietly, consistently, with a clear plan. I sat Jessica down and I laid everything on the table. Not the anger, that had burned off in the 4 days I'd spent at Neil's. What I laid down was the truth. I told her I understood what had happened. I told her I understood the pull of Todd's world, the spectacle of it, the way it rewarded the children with joy in visible, immediate ways. I told her I understood that 4 years of watching me disappear into coursework had created a version of our marriage where she was, in many ways, doing it alone. And then I told her what had changed. "The degree is finished," I said. "The patent is signed. I'm going to have more time, more presence, and more resources than at any point since we've been together. The question is whether you want to be here for it." Jessica looked at me for a long time. "I want to be here," she said. "I need something from you," I said. "Not an apology. I need you to see me. The way you saw me when we first met, when you told me the difference between substance and glitter. I need you to choose substance. Consistently. Every time." "I know," she whispered. "I know I didn't. I'm sorry." "I'm not asking you to be sorry," I said. "I'm asking you to decide." She reached across the table and took my hand. "I decide you," she said. "I always did. I just got lost." I left her hand there for a moment before squeezing it. "Then we rebuild," I said. "Here's what came next, and I want you to understand it clearly, because it's the part of this story that people expect to look one way, and it actually looks another. Revenge, in the way I understand it, is not a confrontation. It's not a scene. It's not calling Todd Barfield and explaining to him what he cost me. It's not making Jessica choose publicly or humiliating anyone at a dinner table. Revenge, the way an engineer understands it, is results. In October, 5 months after graduation, Aldrich Energy Solutions presented my microgrid system at the National Rural Electrification Conference in Nashville. My name was on the presentation. My patent was cited in 3 separate research papers published that quarter. Jeffrey Aldrich gave a keynote in which he described the system as the most viable solution to distributed rural power infrastructure I've encountered in 20 years of this industry. The Columbus Dispatch ran a short piece on Columbus area innovators. I was in it. My firm, where I'd been a lead engineer for 6 years without particular distinction, offered me a vice president of engineering role after the coverage. I negotiated instead for a part-time consulting arrangement that let me focus on developing a second patent while maintaining an income. Todd Barfield, who had built a real estate business on leveraged commercial properties, ran into the interest rate environment that destroyed highly leveraged commercial real estate portfolios in 2024. By December, he had sold the Dublin house. The outdoor kitchen went with it. I don't know where he moved, and I didn't ask. Braden told me about it one evening while we were working on a school project in the kitchen. He mentioned it the way teenagers mention things they're still processing. Sideways, without looking at you. Dad sold the house, Braden said. He's in an apartment now in Worthington. I heard, I said. The DJ was cool, though, he said. Then, after a moment, I wish I'd been at your graduation. I looked at my stepson. 14 years old, trying to be a man, figuring out what kind of man to try to be. You know what? I said. Aldrich has a lab tour coming up in March. They want to show the system to some engineering students. You want to come? His face did something that reminded me of Emma when she'd told me about her A. That particular brand of genuine, uncomplicated happiness that children show when someone invites them into a world they didn't know existed. Yeah, he said, I really do. Emma came to Cincinnati with me in March for the lab tour. So did Lily. So did Braden. Jessica came too, carrying a thermos of coffee and holding my hand in the parking lot of Aldrich's facility as we waited for the doors to open. A young engineer from Aldrich's team walked the kids through the model installation they'd built to demonstrate the system. He showed them how a single microgrid hub could power 12 rural homes with a combination of solar input and stored battery capacity. He showed them the fail-safes, the redundancy systems, the way the design accounted for grid fluctuations and weather events. Who invented this? Lily asked. The young engineer pointed at me. Lily turned and looked at me the way 9-year-olds look at someone when they've just recalibrated their understanding of who that person is. That's your dad, the engineer said. I know who he is, Lily said seriously. I'm just seeing him differently. I don't have children of my own. Emma is my heart, but she came to me through loss, and Braden and Lily came to me through marriage. But I can tell you that in 20 years of professional life, in 4 years of graduate school, in every hour I sat at a lab bench or a kitchen table with a mechanical pencil and a legal pad, I have never felt more seen than I did in that moment. By a 9-year-old in a Cincinnati engineering lab, standing in front of a model of something I built from nothing. Jessica and I went to couples counseling. I want to say that clearly, because I think people romanticize the idea of a marriage surviving a rupture through some grand declaration, some moment of clarity, some single conversation that heals everything. That is not how it works. What works is the same thing that works in electrical systems design. Slow, methodical diagnosis of every point of failure, patient reconstruction, and the willingness to keep testing the system until it holds. Our counselor, a woman named Dr. Andrea Stiles, whose office is on 5th Avenue in Columbus, helped Jessica articulate something she hadn't been able to say to me directly. That in the 4 years of my graduate program, she had felt invisible, that my ambition, which she admired, had also consumed the space in our marriage where she'd felt seen. That Todd's world, as superficial as it was, had offered her something that felt like attention. That was hard to hear. I want to be honest about that, because I believed I'd been doing everything for my family, and the truth was more complicated. I'd been doing everything for a version of my family that lived in my head, while the real version sat at home feeling alone. I didn't like that, but I had to hold it, and she had to hold her own truth, that she had made a decision on graduation day that she cannot take back, and that the work of repair belongs as much to her as to me. We're doing that work. Some weeks it's easier than others. In February, Aldrich offered me a position I hadn't seen coming. Director of Technology Partnerships, a full-time role in Columbus, managing the deployment relationships for my patent and several other technologies they'd licensed. The salary was nearly double my previous engineering income. The title was official recognition of something I'd spent 4 years earning the right to hold. I accepted on a Friday afternoon. I drove home. I pulled into the driveway of the house I'd lived in for 3 years, the house with the kitchen table I'd built from a kit on a Saturday morning. Emma was in the yard throwing a lacrosse ball against the fence, the way she does when she's waiting for something. "How'd it go?" she called. "Got the job," I said. She dropped the lacrosse stick and ran across the yard and hugged me the same way she'd hugged me after graduation. Hard, around the waist without reservation. The way children hug when they haven't learned yet to be careful with hope. "Are you happy?" she asked. I thought about the empty seats in row F, the 95 missed calls, the burger I ate alone at a bar on North High Street in my graduation gown, while a bartender asked what I was celebrating. I thought about Lily in a Cincinnati engineering lab saying, "I'm just seeing him differently." I thought about 4 years of legal pads and mechanical pencils and cold coffee and Saturday mornings in lecture halls and every single thing I built without knowing yet whether it would amount to anything. "Yeah," I said. "I really am." Here's what I want to leave you with, because I've been thinking about how to say it clearly. There is a version of this story where I go to Todd's housewarming, where I knock on the door and tell him what happened, where I have a dramatic confrontation with Jessica at the kitchen table that ends in screaming and tears and someone driving away for good. There is a version where the children choose sides and everyone loses. I didn't live that version. I lived the version where a man takes 4 days at his brother's house and a burger at a bar on North High Street to get very clear about who he is and what he's built, and what he refuses to lose, including eventually his marriage, on terms that required both of them to be honest. The revenge I got was not against Todd Barfield. He built a beautiful house and then lost it. That happened to him independent of anything I did. I didn't cause it. I didn't celebrate it. The revenge I got was against the version of myself who believed that doing the right thing quietly, indefinitely, without ever demanding to be seen, was a sustainable way to live. That version of Patrick Holloway walked across a stage alone and drove to a bar and ate a burger in a graduation gown and then spent 4 days thinking. The version that came out the other side signed a patent licensing deal and became Director of Technology Partnerships and stood in a Cincinnati engineering lab while a 9-year-old girl decided to see him differently. Those are not the same man. My name is Patrick Holloway. I'm 38 years old. I'm a lead electrical engineer, a patent holder, and a Director of Technology Partnerships at Aldrich Energy Solutions in Columbus, Ohio. Nobody from my family came to my graduation, and what I built afterward changed everything.